Thanks, Tamsin. Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. Now, the 33-year-old nurse, Lucy Letby, has been found guilty of murdering 7 infants and attempting to kill 6 more whilst working on a neonatal ward at the Countess of Chester Hospital, making her the most prolific child serial killer in modern British history.
But what on earth could drive a young woman to commit such heinous acts? And did the police act fast enough to prevent it?
To delve into this, we're now joined by former Metropolitan Police Detective Colin Sutton, famed for catching the evil serial killer Letby Belfield, and the forensic psychologist Dr. Naomi Murphy. So, Naomi, I'll start with you. It seems that she managed to, I can only say, confuse people. Nobody thought it was her at all. She's got friends coming out to defend her, or she did. The managers at the hospital couldn't believe it was her at all. So let's get into the mind of her. Is she 2 people? Is that what it is? This evil killer and this person who seemed nice, innocent, vanilla? Those are the words used to describe her.
I think this kind of splitting and fragmentation of a person is not that unusual in people who commit acts of serious violence. So, you know, when people are emotionally disconnected from their feelings and not able to cope with their emotions, it's possible for them to portray themselves as one thing in one situation and another thing, another person in another situation. You have assessed numerous people for acts of cruelty towards children where they've supplied lots of references from family, friends, relatives testifying that they've been wonderful parents, when in fact the evidence has suggested otherwise. And I don't believe those people were lying, but I think these individuals can portray themselves as 2 very different people. And I think, you know, to some degree that's a very accurate reflection of this person.
And I think what helped the detectives say and find out and get the evidence it was her, she had trophies at home. She'd kept notes. She'd kept a diary. These trophies, why do they need them?
I think this kind of, you know, serial killing is extremely rare. There's probably been less than 40 in the UK since Jack the Ripper. So we're talking about a very, very rare kind of murder. Most murders are carried out by people who are quick-tempered, impulsive, they can't cope with their feelings and they lash out with rage. But actually, in the case of somebody who's killing repeatedly, there's a degree of thrill at these acts of murder. I mean, the incidents were very close to one another, suggesting there wasn't a period of remorse or chaos afterwards, which is often what happens with people who murder under other circumstances. And so the idea that the act itself would potentially be quite thrilling and boost her narcissistic self-esteem, it's likely that having these trophies at home would serve as a reminder of that.
Colin, can I bring you in here, obviously with your experience and expertise in these matters? The thing that struck me about this particular case was that, to all intents and purposes, it seems that nobody could detect a motive for her committing these crimes. How rare is it for somebody to commit crimes of any level without any seeming motive for doing it?
I think everyone has a motive for what they're doing. What's rare is actually that we get to find out what the motive is, because quite often these people are in denial and they won't admit that they've committed the offences anyway. And of course, in that case, they're never going to say why they did it. The important thing for investigators often, and this may shock some people, is that we are concerned with the who, the where, the why, the who, the where, and the how. And the why is kind of a secondary consideration for us. We don't need to know that to put them before the court and get them convicted. And you know, we're not psychologists, and we don't need, in the absence of sort of being stuck and needing to look at motive as a potential indication of who might have committed it, which does sometimes happen. But when you've got your suspects and you're interviewing them, you're accumulating your evidence, the why isn't really that important.
Colin, you obviously was a man who caught the serial killer, Letby Belfield. What was it then with your, I will only call it meticulous police work? How did you catch him in the end? How do you catch these serial killers?
Yeah, I mean, there are some parallels between these cases, actually. And as Naomi just said, you know, the most murders are committed spontaneously and not planned. And they're the ones that generally you can throw, almost infinite resources at, and you will solve them. And that's why the conviction rate and the detection rate for murder is so high. It's those, tiny percentage at the end where people go out intending to kill and therefore intend to avoid detection that are the most difficult cases. And this case, we had there was no forensic evidence, there was no DNA, no fibre, no fingerprints, none of that. What was needed was a meticulous and logical investigation to accumulate small pieces of circumstantial evidence that on their own perhaps might appear almost insignificant, but by the time they were put together, they can create a compulsive case. And that's what Cheshire Constabulary did. And I don't think we should underestimate the difficulty and the dedication and the skill with which they carried out this investigation over a long time.
Colin, Naomi, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us this morning. We appreciate your expertise in these matters. Thank you.
Now to look through the top stories of today, we're delighted